Welcome to BIA, Canada's top black media provider. Whether you're looking for shows on fashion, art, music, or simple lifestyle, we bring you the best content the black community in Canada has to offer and so much more. And better yet, do you have an idea for a project you'd like us to help you with? We provide equipment, studio, and office space, as well as a team of dedicated individuals to help you bring those ideas to life. So don't wait. Check out our new website at biamedia.ca for more information on how to contact us and start creating today. BIA Media, your way.
What is up, everybody? It's Dr. Vibe here, host and producer of the award-winning Dr. Vibe Show, the home of Epic Conversations. And I'm the host of Epic Conversations 2020 Best Podcast News Award winner, 2018 Innovation Award winner, given out by the Canadian Ethnic Media Association. I also am the co-host and co-producer of the only online show in the world for dads and fathers. It's co-sponsored by Dove Men Plus Care and Dad Central, Canada's national fatherhood organization. And as part of that collaboration last year, and that collaboration I've been a part of for about 3-4 years now, by the way. But as part of the collaboration last year, I was part of a team that reached out around the world to 100,000 fathers directly or indirectly. So as always, I like to say you're blessed, highly favored, a magnet for miracles, and a solution for someone's problem. And it's broadcasting live here on June 12th. A little bit of an getting to more sunny afternoon here in the Greater Toronto area. And we're doing Black Canada Talking, which is a live online event that provides Black Canadians the opportunity to give their takes and POVs on stories that are of importance to them. And we have, well, it's not an old friend. It's an old friend to me, maybe new to some of you, but I have a feeling some of you in Black Canada have heard about this gentleman or heard from this gentleman before. Farley Flex, he's an impresario, and social change innovator, whose recognitions include the Queen Elizabeth II Diamond Jubilee Award, the Scarborough Walk of Fame induction, Unicef Ambassadorship, and several others. His accomplishments in the entertainment industry include managing multiple Juno Award winners, including Maestro Fresh West, launching and operating Flow 93.5, celebrity judge on Canadian Idol, and much more. He's always chosen to juxtapose business endeavors with community collaboration. And, he's very much involved in organizations like Urban Risk Solutions. He does a lot of work. He's very passionate about youth, but he's very passionate about Black Canadians and Black Canada. So we're going to be chatting with him today about the state of the Black community. So welcome for the first time on the Black Canada Talking stage, Mr. Farley Flex.
Good afternoon, and thanks very, very much for having me.
Yeah. Hey.
I apologize. I guess I should apologize for reaching you from my car, but I was actually at a great event today that a young man, well, actually, Jamal Augustine.
Yes.
So he had me speaking at one of his pop-up trade market events. It was fantastic. Just young Black entrepreneurs, or not necessarily young, but new and aspiring Black entrepreneurs that are trying their best to carve out their piece of the proverbial pie. So it was a quite an engaging experience to meet different people and working with them. And it connects to what we want to talk about, Dr. Vibe, in terms of just where we are in terms of the readiness to move to the next step as a community. So it's actually a good sequence of events for the day.
Absolutely. Well, we say paraphrase, it's a good flow.
Exactly.
Right? It's a good flow.
Exactly.
Are there any parts of your wonderful introduction that I didn't say that you'd like people to know about?
Well, most people know me from the things that I guess are most, marketed or promoted or what have you in media and music and so forth. But and not that I necessarily want to be known for it, but I am I get a lot of gratification from the work I do in community. And currently the work I'm doing as a partner at Urban Red Solutions with my business partner Roderick Barrington, my role as an advisory council member on the Black Business Professional Association, the steering committee of the Pan African Credit Union, which is a critical piece I want to talk about. And then some of the projects that I work on, both within Urban Red Solutions and from the standpoint of just community betterment, that the things I believe that, as I call, my phrase about attacking the gap, right?
Yes.
I believe there are specific gaps that we need to attack on offense and specific gaps that we need to close on defense. And I use a lot of sports references, so I apologize to those who are not into sports, but they're usually a good way of crystallizing messages. So I will continue to do so until otherwise advised.
No problem. Well, it's our conversation, but I want you to steer the ship. I'm going to steer the ship. Where do you want to start with? Where do you want to start? What's the first route you want to complete, as we say in football?
Well, let's do it almost chronologically. So yeah. I think parenting is a great place to start, because that's where all new beginnings are, or where we find new beginnings in terms of the lives of our young people. And the default understanding, and it's specifically that an understanding is where we come from historically, the different experiences that we've had historically, and how they're still impacting our choices and unawarenesses, I guess you could say, in current times. So I need to make sure that folks understand that the impacts of colonization and the transatlantic slave trade, we're not over them. We have not healed from them yet. And the fact that we have not healed, then results in certain manifestations that we're seeing recurrently. And I often say to people who perceive me to be successful, I say, in my heart, I don't feel successful if the bodies that are on the ground for shootings in our city and so forth, and in our country, quite frankly, are melanated people like myself. If I can have an impact on mitigating that likelihood, or that prediction that people can so comfortably make, then I'll begin to feel some measure of success. So
I want to drill down even more when it comes to parenting. And you were like this. I had the honor and pleasure yesterday to hang out with my dad and some of his friends from Cornwall College days.
Okay.
And the oldest person there was 85. And the youngest person there outside of myself was about 60. And just hearing the stories about parenting from those days. And I know you believe in this, and I do. Parenting is not just bloodline.
No, not at all. Parenting is an honor.
Yes.
So parenting is an honor. It's a privilege. And it's also a skill, and it's the skills part I want to talk about. How do we skillfully parent our children, and not just individually in the nuclear family, but as a collective. The whole village concept that some people might say is cliche or whatever, but the reality is it's relevant in today's society. What we need to recognize as parents is that we have to prepare our children for the system of operation as it stands in this hemisphere. So education being a critical part of that. How ready are we sending our children to school to compete, right? Are we reading? Do we know our times tables? Do we recognize, images, whatever it may be from an early childhood education standpoint? How ready are we sending our children to school? And if we're not doing as great a job as that as we need to, how are we closing that gap, right? And the way to close that gap, if the individual parenting body does not have the acumen to do so, then where are the lateral supports from, whether it be neighbors, relatives, social services, whatever it may be, to ensure that gap is being closed so that child doesn't perpetuate the cycle of challenges that their parents went through. So that's the number one thing. How ready are we sending our children to school? And, once we send it to school ready so that they're competing, if you think of it as a foot race, are they starting at the same point on the starting line as other groups, whether it be ethnic groups or mainstream, what I call the dominant caste, right? The white families, etc. Are our children at the same starting line as everybody else? If they can't effectively comprehend based on the requirements of, let's call it junior kindergarten or even preschool, right? Then they're automatically starting behind, recognizing that as Black people, we are expected to be behind, and we're seen as being behind. So we're adding another whammy, if you will, right? That we don't need to add. So I'm very, very adamant about the importance of that aspect of readiness, but also on the collective level, beyond the peer-to-peer parenting and it takes a village to raise a child. I believe that as many other ethnic groups have, they have supplementary education models where their children go to school on Saturdays or throughout the summer, et cetera, learning about their heritage, their culture, their traditions, et cetera. Where is that for us as African Canadians? And how available and accessible is it? That's step number one. Step number two is, are we actively thinking and talking about establishing Black education facilities and in the form of charter schools, which go beyond just the weekend or after school programs, actual charter schools where Black children are being taught by people who love them inherently by virtue of that common circumstance. And I have examples, many examples of schools where Black educators are educating Black students, and the success rates are like an order of magnitude greater than children who are in the public school system. Jeffrey Canada, the Harlem School for Boys, is one example. Sending, I think it's around 70% of the young men who go to that school go to Ivy League colleges and universities. Then we have locally, we have a French school in Durham called Ronald Marion that just by virtue of proximity and population has about 95% Black students, 95% Black teachers, and they're sending 100% of their grade 12s go on to post-secondary or into the trades. 100%, not 84 or 64, like 100%, Dr. Vibe. Like when I see, when we talk about possibility supported by precedence, right? There's no argument, so we can't say, oh, but this, oh, but that. We just got to say, what do they do to be successful, and how do we replicate that model? Once we replicate that, sorry?
Go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
What is preventing more success stories like what you just shared in Durham happening in other areas of Canada? Because like in Toronto, we have the Afrocentric School, but and Winston Churchill Collegiate. Outside of those two institutions in Toronto, I don't really know anything else. What is preventing it from happening, and what can we do to take it to that next step?
Okay, so what we have to do to replicate the model to go to the next step is have some level of autonomy within our own community to say, we're going to provide this for our own. And, because we pay taxes, grants and everything are absolutely feasible and legitimate ways of finding funding. But then I think we also have to invest in ourselves as a community, right? Because I don't know that the Chinese schools, that there's one at Don Mills and York Mills, and several others that I can't name, but I've seen them and I've talked to people, and most of them are funded by their own community. Right? So we know we have some different economic challenges than other communities do, but these are all things that if we intentionally address them, we can allocate that accumulation of revenue to specific things that are going to close the gap between us and our from a competitive standpoint and a coexistence standpoint between ourselves and other groups who are excelling. So when you go to Waterloo, Queens, U of T, etc., what is the per capita amount of Black people Black students we're seeing on those campuses who have excelled through, elementary, middle, and high school and gone on to these higher institutions of credit that are highly accredited? We have to have a concentrated, intentional plan that we come by together. We come about it together. And, you'll hear me reiterate this like a broken record. The ability to collaborate and work cooperatively is something that we have to reinstill in our DNA because it was taken out of our DNA based on the slave experience, right? We trust, I don't have to know you, you and I have known each other forever, but I trust you and I would trust you without questioning. I'd rather you lose my trust than have to earn it, kind of thing. I should trust you by default so that we can get the job done. So that's what I would say with respect to the parenting side at the early stages, and then just the involvement in your child's life. How many of us know what our children have chosen to be in life in terms of career planning? How much are we influencing and supporting that? We need to know these things. I did a little experiment in an unnamed community where it was a parental engagement event, and so the children at this elementary school and their parents were there. I did almost like a parent-child version of the dating game. So I was asking parents if they could identify what their child was, what said when I grow up, I'm going to be. That's actually what I call the little exercise. When I grow up, I'm going to be. And this was in the Black community, and the majority of them honestly failed the test. Like they would say one thing, and the child would say something completely opposite. And then you ask if that information has been shared, and the child says, I think I told my mom and dad, or da-da-da. But did the parent ask the child, what are you enjoying in school? What are you strongest at beyond just what's on the report card? What makes you excited when you're walking to that class? And then you engulf them with those interests to the best of your ability, or do the investigation, the due diligence in the community to say, my child likes physics. Are there any programs out there outside of school that I could introduce to my child so that they can have an elevated opportunity, not just the standard school opportunity in the classroom, but an elevated opportunity to follow that, pursue that, and make a concentrated decision and an informed decision that that's what they actually want to do and want to become. You know what I'm saying? And once you identify that as early in life as possible, success is almost inevitable. Right? Success is inevitable when somebody can identify their interests, their personality traits, and their skill sets, right? And say, these are the career paths that I can go down, including entrepreneurship, of course, right? These are the career paths that I should go down based on my strength in communication, math, and what have you, based on my interest in this, that, and the other, based on my personality traits, you know, and so on and so forth. I just came, as I said, from an entrepreneurial event here, and I met a couple of shy entrepreneurs. Those two things don't go hand in hand, because I'm walking by your table. If you're too shy to tell me what your product is all about, how much it costs, where did you source it, where else can I find it if I don't buy it today, and you're too shy to share that, you either have to have a colleague or a member of your team who has that ability, or find it within yourself. You see what I'm saying? So, but you know, the reality is, unfortunately, I think entrepreneurship in our community has three sort of starting points. There's starting point A would be some folks who maybe didn't go as far as they wanted to or could have educationally decide, I'm going to get into my own business, right? That doesn't necessarily make you an entrepreneur. That makes you someone who's out, your options are limited, and entrepreneurship is a free entry card, right? Then you have the second option, which is the folks who have the education but have a passion or an interest that they want to pursue, right? And they decide to become, those are people like myself and yourself, right? You love the broadcasting and the dissemination of information, so you've chosen that as a professional avenue that you want to go down. Then there's the third group who build the academic acumen through whether it be law school, medical school, whatever it may be, and then they're not excluded by virtue of anti-Black racism. They can't join the big firms like McCarthy Tetro, Gowlings, Warefolds, these big five law firms, or they can't get into the top hospitals, or they can't get into the top accounting firms. So by default, they say, okay, I'm just going to start my own boutique firm, right? But the problem with that is boutique firm combined with lack of trust in terms of collaboration, etc., keeps you boutique for like too long. Whereas we should have our own black firms that are the size of Gowlings, the size of McCarthy Tetro and Warefolds and McMurtry and those big law firms, because we can serve not just our community, but all communities with the same acumen and the same skills. And we have other nuances that other people tell us we have, and we know we have, like our charismatic ability to communicate and to you know, it's even if it's somewhat performative, it's the way we showcase things, our color, our dynamic, our flavor. People love our culture. Our culture is the most popular culture on the planet. So when you add that to your entrepreneurial endeavors, whether it be mom and pop type entrepreneurship or entrepreneurship as an extension of a profession like law, your own medical clinic, your own accounting firm, excuse me, with multiple employees. So you're beyond small business. You've entered into medium or larger business by description. And then we'll be competing in a way that will command equality as opposed to asking for equality. And that's a big gap that I want to address as well, right? But as I said, parenting being the beginning stage, We need to support the parents who may not have the acumen, make sure our children are going to school ready, make sure we're fostering their interests and supporting them and introducing to them other avenues that are co-located with that interest, right? Then you have them selecting their courses accurately as opposed to just selecting the easiest course or the course they think will allow them to get by. Like we're beyond getting by now. We've shown our resilience. Now we got to show our brilliance, right? So once we do that, Dr. Vibe, now we've got that segment of youth that are now heading down the right path, along with the Afrocentric or charter schools that are needed to where love is included in education. Cultural sensibility and sensitivity is included in the educational experience, so that they could feel a sense of pride and promise that they should feel, as opposed to being in circumstances where the teacher through whatever implicit biases or whatever it may be, right, is limiting their potential, right? So
in your journey with this, and you've been doing this for a while, are parents more receptive to this thought process now than they are in the past?
I would say yes, but we haven't yet found a platform to disseminate the message like platforms like yours. Right, we need more of these platforms where people run into the same information 2, 3, 4 times, so they can say, "Oh shoot, maybe I should pay attention to that." But right now, the Dr. Vibe show may be the only show, right, that Torontonians or Canadians can access these types of dialogues. Right, I don't know if it is or not, but I know there aren't a ton of them. Right, we need more from a per capita basis. We need more of these types of platforms where we can share dialogue and build and edify one another. Right. And then you have the reality of when you go from beyond the charter schools or the Afrocentric programs and so forth, then it now becomes that selection of which universities are we going to. HBCUs, historically black colleges and universities that love us inherently, right? As opposed to facing the stereotypes that may be present at some of these other facilities. Great universities, don't get me wrong, they all have their own merit, but the reality is, if your expectation of a particular group is lower, then those expectations generally come to fruition. But if you go to Howard or Grambling or any of those schools where they expect black excellence, you will get black excellence. Kamala Harris, people like that, Howard University, Medgar Evers, Thurgood Marshall, all these folks went to HBCUs and came out shining. Right, so we don't have in this country, we don't have a historically or even a black college and university. Mine is never mind historical, right? So do we go to the States to make that happen? What's the dialogue around that, right? Then you go beyond that step, and you now look at the careers. Are we nurturing our youth to enter into career paths that are going to move the black race forward as well as them as individuals, right? Where are we at the table? Where are the civil engineers who sit when every meeting the mayor of any city has about development, there's a civil engineer at the table. They're part of that decision. How many black civil engineers exist in Canada? We should look at that, and if there's a gap, try to fill it. You've got a kid who's good at math, or a son or daughter who's great at math, talk to them about engineering and what the possibilities are, what the contribution is, that is not just financial reward, but community reward. How will it move the black race forward? You see what I'm saying? And same thing in all the other aspects of industry where we know we're not well represented by virtue of the amount of our youth that are going into the path, educational path that has an outcome of those qualifications, right?
So ideally, and correct me if I'm wrong, you would love to see a system, because in order to change a system, you have to have a system.
Exactly.
We have to have a system where when that black youth child is born, they're thinking black centric as much as possible in the home and in the education system. So have the black schooling right from kindergarten till they graduate from college, university, etc.
Right. Or the trades. Right.
Trades,
and and what we should do to keep apples, do an apples to apples understanding is that when we look at other ethnic groups, right, we have to understand what are the gaps between us and other ethnic groups who could claim marginalization. Although I personally believe, and I've said this many times, BIPOC is a troublesome word for me, because the black and the indigenous experiences are not in the same category of egregiousness as the POC. Right, the people of color. So we, because loss of language, critical problem, right? There's no autonomy or insularity when you're speaking the language of the person who oppressed you and you don't know a second language. Number one. Number two, the loss of our names. You know my position on that. I'm effectively changing my name this summer to be something that's identifiably African. I don't want my name to people to wonder what I look like and so on and so forth, or what my heritage is when they see my name on a piece of paper. It's unfair to me. My historical identity has been stolen. I'm speaking for myself, right? I can speak for others, but I'll speak for myself. Historical identity theft, or HIT, which I call the biggest hit that we've ever embraced, right, or encountered, is the loss of our language, the loss of our own indigenous faiths as African people, and the loss of our names. Right? So our identity has been taken and we have to get it back. And we have to effectively take it back. Right? It's not a violent thing or an aggressive thing. It's just a purposeful thing, an intentional thing. I have the autonomy to change my name. Right? And by the way, Dr. Vibe, since we last spoke, one quick thought. Since we last spoke, I don't know if you're aware of this, but indigenous people in this country are allowed to change their names
for no cost.
Yeah.
And you know, I just want to add to what you're saying about keeping their identity. I'm going to use a perfect example. There's an area of Greater Toronto called Brampton.
Yeah.
So where we went for this get together yesterday, around the corner, first of all, there was a huge temple.
Yeah.
And right beside there was a park where that ethnic group was having a big party.
Yeah.
They didn't have to ensue violence to get that.
Exactly. Exactly. What they have that we don't have is a sense of a common denominator. It's not even about being able to get along. It's a togetherness that comes from common denominators. So you speak Urdu or you speak Tamil or whatever it may be, and I speak Tamil, so let's talk in Tamil.
Well, you know what's interesting? And people say this is hard to do, but you know what? Interesting. We do it in churches.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, but guess what? What are we doing in churches? We're practicing a religion that was placed upon us, right, by our oppressor. With great respect to all the people of faith. And people will say, oh, Christianity was originally a black religion, but that's not how it's interpreted globally. Like, let's be real, right? It's almost like rock and roll. Rock and roll is black music, but nobody walks around saying that, right? When I say draw a picture of a rock and roll star, you're not going to draw a black person, generally speaking, although we are the creators of it. We know the Chuck Berrys and the Little Richards, et cetera, right? We know those people, right? But the reality is, when we talk about rock music, that guy's a rocker. What does that look like? It doesn't look like a brother with braids, right? So we got to accept the realities of perception and reality. Then, you know, when we look at this next step beyond the educational piece in parenting, we have to look at these aspects that we're just talking about. What is our cultural identity, and what are we passing on to our children, right? Our cultural identity has everything to do with how insular we are and how recognizable we are to one another, right? Again, on paper, not just visually, right? So we have to make sure that we're embedding in and instilling in our children their sense of identity, so they don't fall down a path of wandering and finding themselves, like wandering, WANDERING, and WONDERING. Like it's not an acceptable way to go through life, not knowing who you are, why you are, what you are, when you are, et cetera, et cetera.
So I want to interrupt you politely there. Are the parents that you communicate with, are they doing that with their children?
Not to the extent that we need to, right?
Okay.
There are some who are doing it. There are some who are Afrocentric in their being and are accepting and actively searching for their truth, right? I just met a sister in here who educated me. As I told her about the process of changing my name, she said, you need to talk to a person named Fiona in England, who is an expert on this, an actual expert. So she's somebody I'm going to connect you with, so that we could have her on the
platform. Yes.
Right? So that we can make her information and her knowledge more accessible, and not just accessible for hearing, accessible for application. Because knowledge without application has no value, right? So I'm going to reach out to her.
We need to get her on, because we need more people like that so that people can make a decision and take action.
Exactly. Exactly. So that's part and parcel of it. And so once we have an identity, it gives us a bit of a better path, a clearer path to go down with a sense of pride and confidence. You know, meeting a shy entrepreneur is not a pleasant thing, right? An entrepreneur should be able to tell me about their products, their profit margins, their this, that, and the other. And if you're too shy to really talk about that, let's say hypothetically I wanted to invest in that business, it would be a tough sell. So I'm not trying to pick on any one individual and make any disparaging remarks, but I just want us to be blossom in success. That's really what I want.
Well, it's when you talk about cultural identity, Black cultural identity is a billions of dollar business.
Absolutely.
Billions.
Absolutely. Black
and I would think at least the majority of those billions ain't going to us.
No, vast majority. We're getting peanuts. We're getting the crumbs of that. When you pay LeBron James $38 million a year, people, oh my goodness, LeBron just became a billionaire. But what about his owner? What about the guy who owns the team? Right? Who are from, generally speaking, from what's considered to be a minority group in population. The predominance of professional sports teams owners are Jewish people. Predominance.
And communications.
And communication. And anything, if you look at, and this is what I mean by strategically steering our children into careers where there's an existing gap or where there's or that are going to move our entire community forward, right? The more businesses we have that our own people can patronize, the more we're going in the right direction. That's what people have to understand. And this is not to be exclusionary. This is about a specific measure of autonomy that allows us to be inclusive. You understand? When you can provide for your own, you can then invite others in without any fear of risk or threat. You see what I'm saying? But when you don't have anything of your own, everything is a fear of risk or threat. We see how we behave. That's why we don't necessarily get along the way we should be, because we're all holding on to the little morsels that we think we have, right? And we don't want to share them because we don't know if we can get more. But if we worked within our community, I've shared with you this before, the dollar stays in the Jewish, Indian, South Asian, and Chinese communities for 26 to 28 days. The dollar stays in the Black community for 6 hours. Yeah, you're shaking your head because you recognize.
I know it's true. I know it's true. I know it's true. That's why I'm shaking my head.
Yeah, because you recognize the gap. So what are we doing to effectively close that gap? We have to have more support for our entrepreneurs, right? Our entrepreneurs themselves have to work more effectively in terms of cooperative economics. So I was just in as I said, in an entrepreneurship pop-up show. There were approximately, let's say, 25 vendors. Of that 25, I identified one category of the vendors where 7 of them were accessing the same supply chain individually. Individually. So,
wow.
So vendor 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7 were going individually to buy their supplies without thinking that, hold on, there might be 6 other people we can go together and get a discount from economies of scale, right? Shipping costs, all the things that are involved in the supply chain, the product itself, right to shipping to the delivery point, right? There are economies of scale along the entire supply chain. But if you go as an individual, you're going to pay top dollar. If you go as a collective, you're going to pay bottom dollar.
Yeah.
It's not rocket science, Dr. Vibe.
No, it's no. We're in the economy of collaboration and data.
Yeah, that's it. So the things that are blocking us, we have to blow them up, unblock them, whether it be an implosion of some kind, to totally break up that mortar, that plaque, that thickness, the density of thick material that's blocking us from collaborating. We have to understand it, address it, and reverse engineer it, and get back to the African people that we truly are. Remember, Africa had no borders until the colonizers came. Africa was not there was no dividing line between the Igbo and the Hausa and the Yoruba and the Twi, the people who speak Twi. There were no barriers. There was trade and interchange and exchange. But the Europeans, which included the Americans, right, in the 1850s, I think through 70s, divided Africa into 55 different territories, and then started to work on the divide and conquer strategy. but we're aware of it. So why are we perpetuating it?
Yeah.
You know, if we could change, going back to the name change, as I said to you, you know, on previous occasions, if we could change the name of Ryerson to Metropolitan Toronto University because of Ryerson's deeds, why are we walking around with names of people who did the exact same deeds? Like, I'm waiting for the rebuttal for that from someone. I'm waiting for the rebuttal. I'm open 416-998-6562. I'm waiting for the rebuttal. I haven't heard one yet. So Dr. Vibe, we have to make sure we're intentional about this closing of the gaps that Black people are facing, especially in the Western Hemisphere, North and South America. Next thing is, beyond the cooperative economics piece, if we don't recognize that that's the growth, every entrepreneur should have a growth mindset. Talking about scale, identify your scope of business, and then scale your business to a level where you can create a succession plan for generations to come, right? That can't happen by yourself. If you're at this pop-up show, and it's you and your wife, or just you, or just a young woman, or whatever it may be, and you can't be the 19 other places in Toronto where your product is viable, right? You're sacrificing 18 other locations for being in one. Where's the scaling opportunity? You got to bring in family, bring in friends, the young children, young people who are looking for, you know, relative, you know, some aspect of employment. We have to hire from within our own community so we can be successful.
So just want to stop you. I'll give Brett that point. The biggest employer of Blacks is Black business.
Potentially.
Yeah. Black business, right? And I feel for a lot of Black business because they're like George Foreman when he beat up George Foreman in Jamaica. They get the right, lack of support from Black people. They get the left, lack of support from white people. It's said that there's around the Black marketplace is worth around $1.8 billion, like one of the top 10 countries in the world. But that's also $1.8 billion of investment.
Exactly.
Right. It's not spent. We think too much spend, but there's also the investment value.
That's exactly it, my friend. And we have to invest in each other's businesses, either from patronizing them at the lowest level or asking them, you know, I noticed when I come here to get jerk chicken, you seem to be out of it by X time, 12 noon or 1 p.m. Is it an inventory issue? Right? And if it's an inventory issue, how can you help them solve that? Yeah. Is it a little bit of cash injection? Because you're seeing the business is successful, so that mitigates your risk, right? So do you need a cash injection of $2,000 to buy a bigger fridge or to do whatever it takes, right? To be able to accommodate your customers so that you don't lose people because they don't have time to wait for you, right? These little things, these little gestures, I've done it on many occasions. I'm thankful that I have the financial stability to do that, but we could do it on a number of scales. It could be 10 people, right, with $100 each, giving $1,000.
You know, something hurt me a few months ago. I was in a Jamaican takeout establishment, and I won't give the name of it, but it's the largest one in the GTA. So if people really think, so I was at one of the locations and I was waiting for food, and non-melanated person comes in waiting. Then a non-melanated couple comes in. They're waiting. No one from the person who was working up front didn't even approach them.
Oh man.
And about 5 minutes later, they walked out.
Yeah. I've had that happen on so many occasions, my friend. And now what the key is, Dr. Vibe, we have to extrapolate that loss in revenue across the diaspora. You see what I'm saying?
I felt so bad because especially non-melanated, because even more so these days, bad news travels fast.
That's right.
Even faster these days. So what was in my mind is saying, I wonder what those two people are going to tell their friends.
Yeah.
Don't go to this place.
Yeah.
And I just went, oh my goodness. And I know there's a stereotype, Black business. No, it's not everyone. But the thing is, the customer, you got to at least greet them. I was just just going, how are you not even greeting them? Like, and I'm just going, so me, I'm going to be more proactive in situations. Usually I'm in that, but that one really stuck out in my head. I'm going, not only is that could be potential loss of that business right there, but potential other lost business because of the bad experience.
Exactly. So the other category I want to go to is relationships. Okay.
Yeah.
I don't think we know how to love each other. And I'm not talking just couples. I'm talking parent to child, sibling to sibling, friend to friend, etc., etc. We need to revisit. There's a brand that I support called Just Love Me Black, right? It's I don't know if you've seen their merchandise, but I don't know if I've ever worn it in your presence, but it's called Just Love Me Black, right? And it inspires me to think about, what do we love about ourselves and in each other? Like our relationships, we know statistically that 3 out of every 4 Black families in Toronto are fatherless.
Yep.
Right? That's a reflection on the relationships between Black men and Black women. Right? We understand some of the historical factors that contribute to it. But again, once we know,
what are we doing?
Once we know better, we got to do better. Right? And I'm not saying Black people should only marry Black people or anything like that. I'm talking about, how ready are we for the relationships we enter into? Right? There's a gap there too, my friend. Right?
Oh, there's huge. There's huge. Like it's a huge point. And trauma, Black trauma leads to Black drama.
Yeah.
Right?
You got it.
Black trauma leads to Black drama. Right?
It's intergenerational.
It's hundreds of years, not it's hundreds of years.
Yeah.
And I had a great conversation many years ago with a great lady, and we came to the thought process to say, you know that most Black people need a therapist.
Yeah. Well, I would say we need healing, whatever the source of that healing is, which could include therapists and therapy. We need healing. We're broken people. We're not. We're actually going to say we're bent. We're severely bent. We're not broken because we've shown our resilience, right? Despite all the egregious acts against us, we're surviving.
We're still here,
but we're not thriving.
There
you have to go from surviving to thriving, and
yes.
That's where the intentionality comes in terms of how we're addressing these issues. Why are we overpopulating the prisons? We know there's a systemic issue, but are we? What is the contributing factor that we're accountable for? Right? Let's make sure I'll tell you what, a child who goes into school ready to learn with some sense of knowledge going in is less likely to end up incarcerated than a child who's not ready. That's a fact. So we can't blame the system for that early onset period in a child's life, right? We have to say to ourselves, okay, I'm not saying there aren't educated people who are wrongfully accused or exposed to negativity and make poor decisions. But the fact is, if your child goes into kindergarten or junior kindergarten that knows their 10 times table, knows how to read fluidly, right? Read fluidly, a menu in a restaurant or whatever it may be, right? That child is not going to be as likely to fall through the cracks, right? Because the child who doesn't know how to do it is going to go into kindergarten, get teased. Teasing evolves into becoming a bully, somewhat recalcitrant in your behavior, et cetera, et cetera. That's what happens, because when you get teased, people are pulling away at your psyche, your self-esteem, and you're going to try and find optional ways of filling it. That might be out on the field by playing a little more aggressively, getting into more fights, picking on people. And for other people, it might be turn into substance abuse, whatever it may be, right? Promiscuity. All these things are functions of these early issues that we are not addressing. So we have to address these things at the early onset of life as a collective, and so that parents know there's accessibility to the supports they need to heal their children, so we're not perpetuating the cycle.
Yeah, the relationship piece to me is the core to everything. Right?
Yeah.
Relationships with yourself, the relationships in the household. Because to me, I have my core 3: trauma, repetition, symbolism, and once especially the hit of the trauma and many of us don't know how to love ourselves. We don't even know what love is.
Right.
And then, of course, that perpetuates. Then you have that person who doesn't know what love is getting involved in a relationship. Then you're bringing now somebody else.
Exactly.
And it just perpetuates onto another person, can perpetuate to kids, to other members of the family. I think it almost to a point, every Black child needs a course in relationships.
Every Black person, not child, person.
Yep, person. Yeah,
person.
In relationships.
You know, when people say it takes a village to raise a child, Rod always says, my business partner Rod always says, but who raised the village? If you're raised by colonizers, which is what we have been in this hemisphere, we were raised, and all of the principles we're living by are not Afrocentric, they're Eurocentric, right? So if we're living by Eurocentric in doctrines, right, we're never going to be ourselves. And if you're not going to be yourselves, you only could end up, the best you can do is be a replica or a caricature of your colonizer at the end of the day. So we have to figure
around. Too bad. Go ahead. Go on. I was trying to find. I'm gonna bring this book out. I can't find it right now, but there was a book I read written in the 1990s.
Yeah.
If anyone can still find it, whether you're Black male or Black female, you need to read it. It's called Black Men, Obsolete, Single, and Dangerous.
Wow.
Stories of the African American family in transition, written by Haki Makabudi. And I'll never forget, and it was bought at the Burke's bookstore, which used to be on St. Clair, just east of Dufferin. And the key premise of that book was, especially for Black men, European society is based on the individual, African society is based on the collective, the community.
Wow.
That is why so many Black people, especially Black men, were trying to fit a round peg into a square hole. That was the first time I ever read that. I said, boom. I had a knowledge bomb minute. I said, no one ever taught me that. I know I was not going to get that in school. But I knew that once I heard, and it's funny because I've had various Black men on my platform over the years, and a number of them have mentioned that book, how it's been very impactful on their clarity of thinking as a Black man in the world.
And what's the name of the author again, please?
Haki Mahabuti. Just give. I don't know. I don't know if I have it here, but I got it. Here we go. I'm going to show it on screen. Here's the book.
Beautiful.
See it on screen. Black Men, Obsolete, Single, Dangerous. Nice. African American Family in Transition. This is a book, if you can still, it was written back in 1990. I'm sure you can probably still get it online today. And if you want, here's the author of the book, Haki R. Mahabuti. Okay. Essays in Discovery, Solution, and Hope. Incredible book. A lot books like this, and I know there are books that like Powernomics, Black Labor, White Wealth. Yeah, they may be written by Americans, but you know what? It's so applicable to Black Canadians.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, those are evergreen books.
Yeah.
No matter when you read them, they are still applicable.
That's right.
So definitely, you know, like here's look at this. Wow, like I just open up to pages and just like teaching, you know, things that Black men need to believe. You know, create Black men who will be an act in thought, actions, and image. This produces Black men who consciously work in the best interest for their teachers. Therefore, no serious definition of Black manhood is ever contemplated. The call from white people is to always rise above one's culture, tradition, and history. If you are an African American.
See?
Yeah, these are tactics to use against Black men. Use the prison system as a breeding ground for hard, non-political Black men who, for the most part, will return and prey on their own communities.
Absolutely. Lateral violence is a definite symptom of resulting symptom from the colonization and transatlantic slave trade. The other phase I think we want to get into before we run out of time, my friend, is what I call the GFW. Do you know what that is?
No, sir.
That is the George Floyd window.
Oh, okay. Okay. Now I know where you're going with this one. Go ahead.
So the George Floyd window is and is slowly dying, but becoming a window or closing is a window of opportunity that we have had where not only dollars were flowing into the Black community, there was a heightened consciousness about what it is to be Black in North America, right? Or in the Western Hemisphere. And what we did not do, to my knowledge or observation, is we didn't take full advantage of it in terms of the a point of entry, if you will, both from an entrepreneurial lens as well as from an employment lens. Like every single person I knew who was working in some sort of hierarchical corporate environment, I said, apply for the next position up, because there's a certain mood of white guilt, right? There's a certain mood of somewhat corrective measures that are happening, or attempted corrective measures that are happening in industry, and Black people have an opportunity now to get more or to be elevated within their present circumstance, and use that opportunity respectfully to your community, to benefit your community. So the higher we are ranked in any corporate environment, the more influence we can have on bringing others in, because that's not something we do very well. When we get a high prominent position, we are so ardent about holding on to it, right, that we're scared to bring in other Black people because we don't want to look too Black, right? But every other cultural group,
they do it.
They do it. You know, we can see it at the airport. We can see it at Federal Express. We can see it everywhere, where certain groups get in where they fit in, and then they widen the door for others to come and join. We don't do that very well, right? So again, all these things are aspects of that we're aware of and have to do something about. So when I talk about the state of Black Canada, or African Canadian Canada, whatever term people want to use, right? You look at all that fragmentation within our community, we all end up in the same circumstance. There's a state, a condition that we're in that we have to rectify and address so that we can more effectively move forward as a collective. We lost our only Black-owned and operated radio station because we couldn't come together and figure it out. Media is one of the most important tools for dissemination of information. Social media is great, but it's individually packaged, right? The collective package of radio, television, etc., and the support that needs to be there in order for success to transpire, right? We're not demonstrating that. We're not practicing it. So we become vulnerable. If we had applied a cooperative economic model to formerly G98, now Flow 98.7, right? A cooperative model where the community took ownership along with the business people that would advertise on it, and everybody got dividends at the end of the fiscal, yada, 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 that station could never go out of business. Literally. Never go out of business. Never be in receivership, et cetera, because the people investing in it are also gaining from it. So there you have it, man. And
I'm gonna let people. So if our producer, I put contact information for Farley, if he can put it on the screen, his email address, also Urban Res Solutions, and also his phone number. He's willing to give that out. Yes, I'm gonna end our conversation today from actually at the end of the book I mentioned here, Black Men, Obsolete, Single, and Dangerous. I'm gonna read two passages. Great. Sometimes change only comes after a shaking up. I'm reminded of the words of Dolores Lessing from her book, Prisons We Choose to Live Inside. It is particularly hard for young people faced with what seems like impervious walls of obstacles to have belief in their ability to change things, to keep their personal individual viewpoints intact. I remember very clearly how it seemed to me in my late teens and early 20s, seeing only what seemed to be impregnable systems of thought, of belief, governments that seem unshakable. But what has happened to those governments, like the white government in Southern Rhodesia, for instance, to those powerful systems of faith like the Nazis or the Italian fascists or Stalinism, to the British Empire or to all European empires, in fact, so recently powerful? They all have gone, and in such a short time. It is individuals who change societies to give birth to ideas, who, standing out against tides of opinion, change them. This is true in open societies as it is in oppressive societies. And last quote I'll leave here from the book, we still have mountains to climb. The power of the conscious and committed individuals is our major hope. Don't give up, remain activists. People are naturally innovative and creative. The beauty of, I love this last line. The beauty of jogging uphill is being able to run down the other side.
Absolutely.
So on that, we're going to end our conversation today. Farley, thank you for everything you are and will be doing. You, Roderick, and the rest of the team and your family. We're not only blood family, but collective family. And we got miles to go before we sleep.
Absolutely. Miles to go before we sleep. And my last words of encouragement to folks is just have the conversation. And when you have the conversation, you learn, please apply what you learn. When you apply what you learn, teach it to others.
Yeah. I'm getting into more and more of the conversations of people saying, we need to have conversations like this. Well, good. After you have this conversation, start another one with somebody else.
Exactly.
Just start. Just start. That's what we need. We need to just get that energy. Farley, God bless. Peace well. Keep the faith. As always, Dr. Vibe here, Black Canada Talking. I'm on every Sunday, 5 p.m. Eastern Time. Looking forward to it. As always, I'd like to close out with this. Live your life as a dream. If you can dream it, you can make it. Sometimes you have to get smaller to get stronger. Block assumptions, then aim bigger, aim better, aim higher, aim wider. Love, faith, and respect. Remember to give yourself grace. And don't just manage your time, manage your energy. And thanks to BIA Media for producing another epic conversation. God bless. Peace well. Keep the faith and walk good. What is up, everybody? It's Dr. Vibe here. And as always, on most Sunday afternoons at 5 p.m. Eastern Time, Black Canada Talking is a live online event that provides Black Canadians the opportunity to give their takes and POVs on stories that are of importance to them.
Guinea could not afford to participate, but at the last minute came in because there's always issues of money and corruption.
That guy gets to go to jail because he doesn't have the money and he doesn't have the status that Bill Cosby gets. And Bill Cosby gets to get off, not just for the money as well, advancing age, etc.
I'm just going to echo a few things you're mentioning. We know that the Olympics, the Tokyo committee, and also the Olympic Committee was against any protests.
God bless, peace well, keep the faith, and remember, walk good.